Welcome to The People I Play With. This is the show where I interview, well, the people I play with. I'm your host, Jesse Bernico. Hello! Today's guest is Eva Wierzbicki. How you doing, Eva?
I'm doing pretty darn good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. So, Eva's a coworker of mine, and she is a many-time champion of our office cheese club. She also participated in my festival of horror games, during which we played Bluebeard's Bride. But before we get into the specifics of that game, I want to talk about you as a player in general. What would you say your strong suit is as a player? What does Eva bring to the table?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question. I feel like oftentimes when I'm playing RPGs, I have a slightly different perspective than some of the other players have because I do tend to think about a lot of themes and I tend to notice certain patterns that others might not notice. And I don't have certain experiences that others do have. For example, if people are assuming that there's something like really bad happening, rather than immediately going to like fight or flight, I like to think outside the box a little bit or do something that a little bit more subversive. And so I feel like I definitely bring an interesting perspective in terms of how I go about problem solving.
Let me dig into that a little bit. Do you tend to aim for subversion?
No, I don't typically try to do that. I've noticed it happening. I will generally be like, surely the obvious solution isn't the one that's happening, so my brain immediately goes to the next possible choice, which sometimes makes me the odd man out in certain scenarios.
Interesting. Well, do you think there's anything you could improve about yourself being a player?
I definitely think in thinking about things a little bit differently, it means that I'm not thinking about things the way that others are. And so I will just naturally go down a different, less traveled path and then realize everyone else is going down a different road. Definitely getting on the same page in communication is an important thing to have when one's brain tends to stray in paths that not everyone's go to.
In Bluebeard's Bride, you are playing an aspect of one character, so all the players are the sort of interior world of this one character's mind. And in the game, that's represented by these sort of character classes, for lack of a better word, but they're all geared towards these sort of feminine archetypes. And I noticed that you really took your time looking over them at the beginning, and I'm kind of curious, what qualities like were you looking for, and why did you finally settle on playing the Virgin?
So I think I was looking for something that I could understand and therefore embody the most. I'm not a very aggressive person. And so the stronger personalities didn't necessarily vibrate with me. And so I wasn't confident that I'd be able to play those. Like the Animus, I don't know if I'd be able to actually pull that off. And then I know that the mother one, there's a lot of different interpretations of motherhood, but I also didn't know for sure if I was confident enough in my sense of that to be able to pull that one off either. And so what I did know is I could definitely lean into the oh naive, fun, like, oh well, what if like a devil's advocate side? That's just fun to do. I very much enjoy villain characters and doing that, and they're horrible and terrible, but it's also fun to examine them. And so I leaned into the virgin rather than the fatale because I liked the line that the description used of seeing beauty where others do not, and that very much appealed to me.
It's interesting that you hone on to that, because I've seen other people play the Virgin. I don't think that I have seen them really latch onto that idea of finding beauty in the horrific, as much as you did. It's really interesting that it was that aspect of finding beauty that caught your attention. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's the kind of fun of playing a horror game. I would actually love to know your perspective on what the player goal is. From my perspective, it was very much, oh, okay, this is a horror game where horrible, nasty things are happening, and we're just gonna do our best. And then at the end, it is what it is. And I dug that. That was a surprise to me, but I really enjoyed that because just dark themes in general make me giddy. I'm interested to see what others think of that format.
I admit that I am not a subtle horror GM. My mind goes to very dark places very fast. Out of the gate, let's see, we had a dead sister whose body parts are being used to construct a daughter. We had a mild acid bath with a complete physical makeover element to it. We had a physically abusive priest trying to sort of spiritually discipline the bride. But the one thing I noticed is that throughout all of that, you remained kind of this staunch supporter of Bluebeard's good intentions behind all of this. And I'm just curious to, what was holding you onto that dream?
Well, I will clarify. I definitely knew that Bluebeard was a bad, bad man. It was very clear immediately. I was playing into the idea of shame. When I first started playing the Virgin, I didn't immediately make the connection of naivety and innocence equaling shame. But once I did start to like do just light defenses of did he kill our sister? And maybe he didn't, which isn't a crazy conclusion to make. The ingrained idea that a lot of women in our society have of feeling anything negative in the world is their fault because they've been told that as they've grown up and had to learn to reclaim their independence. I think a lot of shame lives in the back of some people's minds and it's something that they have to overcome. Because this was just one aspect of the bride's mind and I wasn't my own full character. I wanted to be that that insecurity inside the woman's brain, inside the bride, intrusive thoughts that would keep poking up that the others would have to fight against. And they did, and I was glad. Like once the energy of the table lessened a little bit, and there was less pushback, I definitely like stopped pushing it as much. But I thought that it was an interesting avenue to explore as one part of a bigger psyche.
That's interesting. See, that's why I ask these questions, because I don't know if I read what you were doing as coming from an embodiment of shame. That's really fascinating. Reading the Virgin as a representation of insecurity, I think, is really fascinating.
As part of a psyche and not being your full character, I also in the back of my mind had this question about character development because I'm not a character. We are all one being. And so when someone starts their like healing journey and unlearns bad habits and bad ways of thinking, that takes a long time. Healing takes a while, and the insecurities and those intrusive thoughts don't just go away. They'll still speak up. And a lot of the time I would say a thing, but I like not take any action on it because if I was playing devil's advocate, I'm not actually going to do anything to harm our body physically. So that's why throughout the entire game, I didn't wean it away as much. I would be more like, oh, what about this? And they would say, well, no, he's bad. And I'd be like, maybe that's true. Maybe.
I'm now curious, do you ever find yourself embodying these types of themes when you are playing a whole character?
Those themes are very, very prevalent in role play, like as I play throughout the entire game. There are definitely like pillars of my characters and their like core characteristics and personalities that I try to stick to, but when it comes to what they choose to do and their motivations, basically every decision is based off of their background, their history, and their ways of thinking, which a lot of it is influenced by those insecurities and the incorrect ideals or incorrect ideas they have about the world. I think that every person is controlled in some way by insecurities and people can definitely conquer them. They can work on themselves and grow. But that's part of the fun of having a character. You can see them grow throughout the whole campaign. They actively overcome their insecurities as you are embodying them and you're thinking about why are they doing the things they're doing. But I don't think that you'd be able to have that growth if you didn't have those insecurities to begin with.
So when you said earlier that you were fighting a little bit less and less for Bluebeard's, sense of innocence, did you in some ways perceive that as the bride growing?
I think mainly, honestly, it was getting just harder and harder to defend as the horrors kept going on. And so that's when it definitely the idea of it not necessarily being the advocacy, but more being the shame rather than maybe he didn't mean it, turning into maybe I actually deserve this. Maybe I've done something wrong and there's something wrong with me. By the end of it, we did end up on the disloyalty side. And so when we did go into the epilogue, I definitely felt like those insecurities and those shames had been so fought against by the bride as a whole, and she was proven to be worthy so many times in the face of everything he was doing that there was no way to justify feeling that way anymore. And like those back of mind thoughts could still be there, but she had fought so hard for her own self-respect and for her own freedom and her dignity that she had earned to actually feel those things in full.
Right. Well, that's actually something I did want to talk about, because when you hit the disloyalty ending, you kind of have these two options of do you go get help, or do you run away? And the table very much were like, we just flee. There's two components to that version of the ending. One component is that the bride does for a short time find someone else, but then it ultimately ends with, and then what happens when Bluebeard tracks her down again? And given that you were this part of her brain that originally was defensive of Bluebeard a little bit, I was kind of curious how that ending landed for you.
I will say, as a player and as a horror fan, I loved the ending because I don't like it when horror always has a happy end ever after, you know? Like, that doesn't feel right. There should be a triumph, but ultimately the themes are dark throughout. So having that spine-chilling ending of, oh gosh, she can't actually escape, I just love that stuff. I think the virgin part of the bride, while she had conquered a lot of her insecurities and had fought those negative feelings so that she could actually feel the confidence and the self-worth that we were striving for. It's very easy when trauma comes to bite you in the butt again to regress and to fall back into those negative patterns. If the bride did indeed go with Bluebeard because she was blackmailed, then she would have the choice to either have to fight all over again or try to combat him every single day, or kind of just give up and fall into those patterns. And I don't want her to give up and fall into those complete patterns. The virgin, as I said before, is that shameful side that is very realistic, but she needs to be fought. She needs to be pushed against constantly. And so him reappearing is definitely something that is going to have to bring her back into the battle zone. And healing's not linear, so good luck, bride.
The way you're almost framing the virgin, which I think is interesting, is almost as an antagonist side of her mind.
I also think that having that side makes her very human. Having those second thoughts or second guessing everything, and like maybe he didn't mean it, making up excuses, going through the denial stage of grief and learning that your husband is a serial killer, I think is a very human emotion and a very human experience. And it is still something to overcome, but that is how we grow and develop.
Throughout this conversation, we've used a lot of like heavy words like shame and insecurity, and some pretty horrific stuff about abusive relationships. And so, in my experience, Bluebeard's Bride requires this incredibly high degree of like trust and vulnerability from everybody at the table. And I'm curious, did you feel like we had that in that space?
On my end, yes. I definitely felt like there was levels of trust and understanding. I, of course, cannot speak for everyone, and I have learned the good lesson of I am not responsible for other people's emotions, and if there are issues, then one must speak up about them. Given that we were all bouncing off of each other, there were frequent reminders of like, we're all the same person, and so we're all in this together. And there were discussions about what to do at certain times, and compromises and whatnot. I think that there definitely was rapport and trust built throughout. Yeah, I felt good about it at the end.
To the point that I couldn't help but notice that you walked out of that room really jazzed. Well, I don't think I've ever seen someone so uplifted by a Bluebeard's Bride game before. I'm a little curious about what was feeding you in that way.
Well, let me put it like this. By the end, every time that you introduced the horror aspect, it was exactly what I was hoping for. And so that was just dopamine after dopamine. I was like, yes, put spikes on the reusable condom. That's exactly what I was going for. Let's go. But honestly, all in all, it's the genre of horror. I think that it's fascinating to explore, to be able to dive into the genre and find the joy within exploring horrible things because we don't want to explore them in real life. It is a safe space where we can let our minds go to a little bit darker space and have fun with it and find the whimsy within that. I think that that's absolutely fascinating. And that's what I love about the genre in general. And so the darker, more messed up things happen, the more giddy I get.
I also walk out of really bleak stuff like super pumped, and I don't think I've ever seen somebody who emoted it so much as you.
In terms of emoting it, I'm just a very authentic person, and I figure I am going to wear my heart on my sleeve, and if I like the freaky stuff, then hey, I like the freaky stuff.
I'm also a very sort of authentic driven person. You know, like I said, when I GM horror games, I just say the thing that comes to me because there is nothing else to be said. That is the only thing. That is the one true set of words to be spoken in that moment.
And I love it too because being able to emote that much and just to have a wonderful time with horror brings hearts like us together who understand it on that very deep level. And that's beautiful.
It is beautiful. So I've been sitting here grilling you with all these questions. Do you have a question for me?
Well, at the end, after I glanced at what you were looking at, I noticed that the sheet you had prompt words and kind of inspirational traumas, but it didn't actually have scenarios. And so I'm curious how your brain was working at those times where you would like pick a trauma and then pick kind of some an inspiration for it and then create something that would then manifest into the room itself. What is that process like?
So there's a reason it starts with the player describing a key because that gives you tone, texture. It gives you some stuff to work with. So there's sort of a free association element that sort of starts the process. And once I know what the room is, right? It's like it's a bathroom. Right. In some ways, the textures also tell me what kind of bathroom, right? It's an elegant bathroom. Right? Then I look down at the sheet and I look at the big categories because there's four big categories. I just think about that room and what theme does it go with. Although it was interesting that I associated the garden with motherhood. Grief, for some reason, is a subset of motherhood, and the roses made me think of like funerals. So it kind of goes in that order. Just raw visual of the room, big theme, little theme. And then the things that come under it, those prompts, the game actually refers to those as moves, like a move in a board game. So anytime you do anything, I go back to that list and I pick one of those prompts and I use that as a response. The reusable condom came from a thing about giving people diseases, right? So the Fatale did a thing that lets her learn a secret about Bluebeard. So I scrolled down the list and I saw give people diseases, and I'm like, Bluebeard's got a sexual disease. How do I embody that in this scene? He's got this washable condom, and the woman in the room knows that it's because he's got a disease and shares that. So that's what that list is. That list is literally every time you do something, I go back to that list, pick something off of it, and embody that into the scene.
So, like for example, in the first room, the garden, when we first entered there, did you already know that we would find a coffin that had our sister in it that was supposed to be chopped up to use for a Frankenstein daughter? Or did the pieces come in as they came in?
It started with definitely there is a coffin, and I think I'd already settled on the sister was in it because I'd already chosen the theme of grief. And then I flipped over the sheet because that's the other thing is that you give me all those things that are like the gifts and her body image and the things she left behind. It tells you what each of those categories of things should be used for emotionally. I'm like, oh, that's right. There was the sister. She got left behind. Okay, I guess she's in the coffin. But then when the caretaker wandered off and then you as the bride decided to follow, I was like, okay, so where is he going? So I scrolled down my list and I saw make her responsible for somebody's child. What if there's a daughter here that's being Frankensteined together from parts of past dead relatives or even past brides? Because we were in a motherhood room, originally the focus was tending to the body because the motherhood rooms are all about foisting responsibility you don't want upon you, right? You must care for this thing, right? Whatever this thing is. But then when the attention turned away from the body, I had to find something new to bring to the table.
Yeah, and people definitely bit wanting to like teach her how to love herself. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because then it becomes like, are you going to accept this responsibility? So all the rooms are like that. All the rooms are built from sort of core image, theme, initial opening moves that's of everything thrust. Part of the game is it doesn't matter where the bride looks, that's where the horror is, right? How does that thing now reflect this thing from my sheet, right? I do find it a very easy game to run, but only because I am that speak truth from fiction. I assume somebody who doesn't have that like initial first instinct that just they know what to say, might struggle with the game a bit. I would love to see you run this game. I think you would do a fantastic job running this game personally.
Like, I think it's just fascinating how different people's personalities come out in these different ways and then create a whole nother human that is one bride. It was fun. It was a good time.
It's an extremely fascinating game, and as far as horror games go, I find it is one of the most effective at truly evoking like real horror. Like most people are really disturbed, by the experience of this game, whereas a lot of other horror RPGs play into a lot of very comfortable, familiar cinematic tropes. Whereas Bluebeard's Bride, unless you're super into gothic fiction, is a little alien to people.
All the players are the center of the horrors and are actively being like prepared to die basically, rather than like, oh, we're adventurers and we're entering a spooky dungeon and we're gonna fight the spooky things. Being the victim of a serial killer and an abuser is something that a lot of either stories or real life tales have prepared us for, and naturally we are very wary of it because it is more realistic than ghosts. So yeah, it is horrific, but it's also interesting to explore because it is more real in certain ways. Adding in the supernatural stuff makes it unrealistic, which makes it more fun.
It's still a metaphor. We're not playing some like hardcore domestic abuse simulator here. We're still in the realm of the uncanny, the sublime, all that wonderful gothic lit stuff. That does give it a bit of distance, but it hits such realistic themes. It really gets under people's skin.
Yeah, honestly, like the realistic scene of the priest being like, I'm gonna cleanse you, and touching her leg and slapping her and telling her to shut up because she's a woman, that was very harrowing. And that wasn't supernatural, but it's because it is more relatable. And thinking about the different parts of the psyche handling that situation too. Should we fawn here? Like, should we be like, yes, I'm a woman. I'm just gonna pretend to be weak so that you underestimate me and then I can get you? Or should we just go for it? Oh, it's fascinating. Sorry, I'm babbling again, but I loved the game. I had such a fun time with it.
I'm glad we've been chatting here. But just to begin to wrap up a little bit, I do like to ask people, do you have a favorite recent game memory? It doesn't even have to be from this game, but it could be.
Honestly, Bluebeard's Bride was a huge highlight. I am extraordinarily biased in this poll, and it was a little bit ago that I finished the Curse of Strahd campaign, but I have to make that comparison because you may be shocked to hear this, but I romanced Strahd von Zarovich in the Curse of Strahd campaign, and there were many similarities in terms of the themes. Basically, imagine Bluebeard popping in once in a while to say, hey, you want to do me a favor? And me being like, will I get something out of it? And him being like, I don't know. And me saying, okay, and then not getting anything from it. And it was great. I had a fun time being manipulated. I think that's probably also why I leaned toward the Virgin, because I was like, I know how to do that. I've done that before. And one of the Virgin's powers was literally caress the horrors. Hilarious. So that's the one I did choose. Yes, I will see the beauty in this horror and I will caress it and maybe I'll pay for it, but I'm gonna have a fun time doing it.
Wonderful. The world of role playing games is extremely, extremely broad and vast. So I also like to ask people if you could play a role playing game with any theme, tone, genre, historical context, what would you really love to play a role playing game about?
So I love animals. And so I know the easiest comp is Humblewood. Everyone is a woodland critter. So if you take that idea, mix it with gothic horrors. I think that that could be a really cool experience where people can play as creatures, but it's darker and you have more roleplay world building opportunities.
Well, thank you for being one of the people I play with and for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much. I truly had a blast playing Bluebeard's Bride. This was a blast talking about it. I'm so glad that you and I have the same horror hearts. It's, the people who don't like horror do not understand it, so talking to people who do is magical.
We'll just play more horror games together. It'll be great.
Well, I'm down. You know I'm down.
This concludes Season 2 of The People I Play With. If you enjoyed this season and would like to help make Season 3 a reality, I've set up a Patreon to help offset hosting and production costs. In addition to supporting the show, you can participate in feedback and gain access to monthly updates, extended episodes, and thoughts I'd rather not share elsewhere on the internet. I've included the link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and contributing your support. Recordings for Season 3 are already underway, but please join me in 2 weeks for a special announcement regarding how you can become a more active participant in the future of The People I Play With.